How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.
My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum and Rico, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. Well, a lot in the news today. Kind of a big news day. Rico was here, so I figured I'd throw him up here. But we're got a lot to talk about. I couldn't even fit it all in the title because Twitter cuts it off. So we got a lot to talk about, more than what's on there. Hopefully, I can get through it all. But I don't know. I'm very curious as to what people think about private companies raising the age to buy AR-15s like Dick's and now Walmart versus the government. Restricting the ages. If Trump's such a businessman, why doesn't he leave it up to the businesses? If he's not a politician, why doesn't he leave the Second Amendment alone? I don't know. I'm going to get your opinion on that. And so much more. Say bye to Rico. Peace him out. So, if Eric is watching the show today, he gets the Knucklehead of the Day award for literally texting me the second I started my show. Way to go, Eric, if you're watching. All right, we got a lot to talk about. This microphone sounds a little weird today. I don't know why that is, but to me anyway, it sounds weird. So, sometimes it hits me. Every now and then it'll hit me that I do a show. That's why it's weird. I do a show. This reverb thing was on. Let's see here. Hold on. Test. 1, 2, 3. There you go. That's better. Every once in a while, I have a realization that I am doing a show on social media without any backing from a network or anything like that. This isn't a radio show like on Sirius when I host, which I'll be hosting for David Webb on Friday. This isn't any kind of a network TV show. Sometimes it kind of dawns on me that I do this every day for over 2 years. I just show up and I just give my opinion, my educated opinion. I have some experts on here at times, and it's interesting. I don't know where we are right now in this country is a very interesting state of affairs because we have the ability now to circumvent the mainstream media. We have the ability to literally get away from these lies that we see on television every day. Networks like CNN, MSNBC, sometimes even Fox. We have the ability to circumvent that. So I don't know if we take full advantage of that, but I will tell you this. I put out the call to the CQRF. I think that this book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, which I wrote, it's behind my coffee cup right here. If you don't know anything about it, this most of the people that tune in know all about it. The book teaches people how to do threat assessments from the attacker's point of view. And there's never been a book written like this before. It teaches you about the attacker's mindset. It teaches you how to do the target package, and then it teaches you how to flip that mindset over to the defensive brain and not make the same mistakes that most people make when they're putting up what they consider defenses. So I got in touch with a lot of the people on the CQRF on the Twitter side, and I'm going to say it again now, but this is a call to arms for everybody that watches this show and takes part. Remember, that's what the CQRF is. I just gave it a name. People that show up here, people that care about the Constitution, that are sick of the political parties. You really are the constitutional quick reaction force. In the field, we have quick reaction forces when the forces get overwhelmed. The CQRF will fly in or drive in, and they will be a force multiplier to take down the enemy. And that's what we need to be for the for the Constitution. And I put out the call to arms for the CQRF to get together and promote this book so we can get it to #1 on the Amazon's bestseller list. Now, it's been #1 in at least one category on the bestseller list since it debuted. Oftentimes it'll go up, like after I host a show or something, it'll go up into the top 100 where I'm pretty much #1 in every category that the book is listed. But my goal is, the highest I've been is #11, been to number 15 and 94, and then a couple other places in the top 100. But that was because of my appearances on these different radio shows. And then when I somehow got on Lou Dobbs' show a week ago. What I want to see, though, is for the CQRF and the people that watch this show to take this book to #1. Your ability to advertise, the power of your voice needs to be heard. Now, I get this all the time in emails. People are saying, our voices they're not heard anymore. We don't have a voice. And I keep telling you, unity. If you unify, there's strength in numbers. So I want to use this as a test. I want to show everybody that watches this show that you have a lot of power. Individually, you're more powerful than you will ever know. But together as a collective citizenry, You have the power to push all the politicians out and reinforce the Constitution back to the way it should be. So let's start with this book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. I want to see the CQRF get behind this book and take it to #1. I want it #1 on Barnes & Noble list, #1 on Amazon. I really could care less about the New York Times. But I want to get this book at the very top for 2 reasons. One, I want everybody in America to have this book because they need it. What you're seeing in politics, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, unbelievable. They are not talking about threat assessments. They're talking about spending millions of dollars. They're talking about bringing up new types of law enforcement, and they're talking about arming teachers. They're talking about gun control faster and bigger than anything. There's no synergy. There's no uniformity, and there's no structure in the way they talk about this stuff. It's like they want to argue about everybody being 21 because they're not mature enough. Yet they'll send people off to war, and they will give them a gun, send them into a foreign country. Or if there is something going on where the National Guard is called out, well, then they also will be carrying guns if they're 18. So we do stuff that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But the politicians do it because they're not subject matter experts, but they think that they are. And they're not structured, although they think that they are. All they're basically doing is politicking. So I want to show you all the power that you can have being uniformed by getting the – I'm not asking you to buy more books. I'm asking you to get the word out. I'm asking you to tweet about it, talk about it. Call your principal that where your kids go to school. Tell your preachers about it, your congressman. We need – I mean, anything you can do. Be creative. Get the word out about this book. And we'll take it to #1. It'll show you the power that you have when the people unify together. Secondly, the more people get this book, the more they'll understand where the politicians are off on what they're saying after this attack. Because the reality is, folks, everything that they're proposing, it's not going to stop attacks. I heard one thing about in New Jersey where they're talking about having state troopers come and do different things, or just. And I've heard in Florida they're going to spend $500 million and they're going to have more school safety officers. One school safety officer is not going to do any good. In the case today, arming teachers. Well, we had a teacher in a school today shoot a gun in a classroom. Luckily, nobody was in there, and then they had a standoff. So you see. The whole point of the matter is, once you introduce weapons inside the school, and I'm not saying I'm not for teachers being armed. They need to go through an extensive training, I believe. But even if you put teachers in the school, if I am an attacker, what do you think I'm going to do if I know, and it's publicized all over the country, that President Trump wants to have teachers armed? See, here's the difference between what they did with the federal flight deck officer in the planes, where they armed pilots, versus arming teachers. They also armed the cockpit with a bulletproof door and a reinforced bulkhead so you couldn't get in there. Well, they're not going to do that with the schools, right? So what do you do? What is an attacker going to do? See, again, we're thinking like the attacker. Well, they're going to go in, and the first person they shoot is going to be a teacher. And they're going to make sure if they're in the classroom, that's who they'll take out first. Because unless the teacher is going to be at the ready when every single student comes in late, or any person comes in the school, they're basically going to have to wait for the shooting to start before they engage. So if I'm a bad guy, that's the first person I'll take out, is the teacher. You have to prevent the weapons from getting into the school. And that's not what's happening. They're going to spend our taxpayer monies to build up security forces that are not going to do that job adequately, when they could do it basically by asking people to volunteer, and first by doing realistic threat assessments like I just did. How many people have thought about that? That's because I'm constantly doing the threat assessments in my mind, looking at things from an attacker's point of view. So we need to get this book into the hands of everybody so they can start understanding this, and we need to show you and everybody else the power of what happens when you unify. When you unify and you get together and you start telling everybody to get this book and it goes to number one, you, the CQRF, are going to take a step back and you're going to say to yourself, wow, this actually, unification actually works. So that's what we're going to do. Now, let's talk about what happens when the citizenry gives away their power and they're not unified. And that's the way we are right now. We're not unified. I mean, we're unified in groups, but overall the citizenry is not unified. What happens? We hear that Oprah Winfrey says that if God tells her to run for president, she will, or something like that. I don't know. Of course, she's not going to get criticized for that. She's not going to get criticized for that at all. Let me pull that back up. Oprah says she would run for president under one condition. No, that's not what I wanted. Anyway, she said something about that today. Well, she's not getting criticized for that by The View, that's for sure. But here's the problem, is that Oprah Winfrey is not who should be leading this country. Majority of people that are in politics should not be leading this country because they're not uniters, they're dividers. And definitely, Oprah Winfrey is not a uniter. She thinks she's a sage, and many people think she is, but she is not a uniter. She showed that many, many times. She's gotten more and more divisive as she's gotten older. So I'm reading some of your comments here. So I'm a little put back when I look at President Trump and he falls right into this category. He has become a politician. And why do I say that? I've been a Trump supporter since before he even declared his candidacy. I was saying that we need an operationally minded person in office and somebody who can handle these establishment individuals, these leftists and these criminals that are in Washington. And I stood by him, and I still think he's doing a great job. But on this particular issue, he has, in my mind, been a complete failure. He continuously brings up the facts of we have to. He's looking very seriously at lowering or raising the age to be able to buy an AR-15 to 21, as though that's going to stop school attacks. It's not going to stop school attacks. I don't know if you can hear that or not. That's FDNY ambulance. So raising the age to 21 is not going to stop attacks. It's not. It's not going to keep people from getting guns that want to get guns, because they're going to be able to get them illegally, or they'll get somebody else that is age over 21 to buy them. So it's kind of a moot point. It's just a massage. That's what politicians do. They throw something out, makes them look good, looks like they're doing something when they're actually not. It's just like young people. They raise the drinking age to 21 because a lot of young people were dying of drinking and driving. The federal government forced the states to do it by cutting their transportation money for their highways. If they didn't do it, they did it. And now what do kids do? They go out and drink. They drink anyway. They get people to buy. They get people to, whatever. They get fake IDs. They have to resort to criminal activity, and then they go drink. Instead of, I don't know, doing something better with the mass transit systems or really upping the laws big time where they get in a lot of trouble if they get caught with alcohol, so that they are forced to make a choice. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me too much the drinking age is 21. However, with the weapons, it's just not going to matter. It's going to be a very similar thing. The law-abiding citizens aren't going to go out and try to get a weapon that they're not old enough to have. But what's going to happen is the people who are 18 that want a gun, they're going to find a way to get it. Just like the people who want to drink at 18 are going to find a way to drink. So this doesn't do anything to secure the schools. Nothing. But yet it's the thing that President Trump continuously talks about. He just continuously brings it up. Today, he's kind of side bashing the NRA, saying that we shouldn't fear the NRA. Now, he may be coordinating that with them. I have no idea. He may be looking at this from a political standpoint of he can massage this. Nothing may get done, but he'll still push this when it comes time to be reelected, which, hey, that's great. That's politics. That's the way it works. I don't like that, but that's the way it works. But is it – I just think – if this president, because of why he was elected, by the people that he was elected, if he came out and said, listen, we're going to do this from the bottom up, not the top down. We're not going to go and do the big pie in the sky, make the leftists happy in the country, and make everybody that's conservative believe that this is true, that if we ban AR-15s or if we stop people that under 21 from getting an AR-15, that there's going to be no more school shootings. If he said, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to concentrate on securing the schools. And we're going to start by doing threat assessments on a number of schools so that we can set a basis, a guide or a baseline or a guideline for the rest of the schools to do threat assessments. And then we're going to, the government is going to take special forces type of people who have worked in unconventional warfare as attackers. We're going to give them a curriculum, and we're going to send them around the country to assist the schools themselves in doing these threat assessments in coordination with the states. Now, wouldn't that just be fantastic? He said, that's the first thing we're going to do. Secondly, we are going to do an exploratory team of volunteer former police officers and veterans from military that have worked in a combat-related field. We're not going to buy them bullets. We're not going to buy them guns. We're not going to buy them gear. They have to get all that stuff on their own. And maybe places will give them that stuff at a discounted rate, or they'll just give it to them since they're volunteering themselves. And everybody will get a tax break for this. If you volunteer 10 to 20 hours a month, you're going to get a tax break for those hours that you worked. If a gun store gives the gun, gives the ammo, or sells it for $1, whatever you want to do to these volunteers, they get a tax break for the rest of the gun. We're going to put that into effect. We're going to try this out at a couple of these schools that we do the threat assessment on to get the baseline, and we're going to put these people out there and see how this works. I haven't heard him say any of that. They're talking about each individual state, and I've seen some people on here saying, no, this should be left up to the states. If it's left up to the states, here's what's going to happen. In the case of Florida, nothing. Nothing's going to happen. There's going to be more killings. And who does it come back on? It comes back on the federal government. Who's it going to end up affecting? It's going to end up affecting you and me and all the other people who have the Second Amendment rights, and it's going to be taken away further and further. So you have to see the way this whole thing works. We are facing two enemies right now: mental health and terrorism. I'm going to loop those both in together as far as attackers go. So we're facing attackers who end up focusing on the school and getting fixated on it as a target. And our other enemy that we're facing is politics that keeps us from having a structured security system in our schools. So this is something that the president could be doing right off the bat, saying, listen, we'll get to Second Amendment later on and we'll discuss some stuff. I don't even want to talk about it right now. What I want to talk about is how we're going to keep guns out of the schools. How we're going to keep guns out of the schools and terrorists out of schools and attackers out of schools is by first fixing the security, doing the threat assessment, getting this voluntary force at least in place so we can test it, working with the states to do this, to set this baseline, sending people out so that they can assist the states in the schools in doing these threat assessments. Because, look, if you're a cop, don't think that you know what I know, because you don't. All right, that's a big, big mistake that people make, They hire Israelis from Israel that were in the regular military, or they hire cops that worked in all levels of law enforcement. None of those people were ever attackers. In special forces, we are trained as unconventional warriors. We are trained as the attacker. We know how to do the threat assessments against you so that we can attack you if you were the target. So don't kid yourself that you think, well, I'm going to hire this expert because they wrote a book and they've been in law enforcement for 20 years. They don't know how an attacker thinks. They may know how a drug dealer thinks out on the street, but they don't understand the way that an attacker thinks. So that is one thing that we have to take into consideration. Okay, I know I'm all over the place on this, but I'm not hearing this from the president. I'm hearing the Second Amendment. I'm hearing that the NRA is not as badass as they think they are. And I personally never hear the NRA saying that they're badass. The NRA is a lobbying firm that stands for the Second Amendment. And there's 5 million members of the NRA. Those are Americans. There should be 60 million members of, I'm saying 60 million because that's half, that's what conservative in this country. But really anybody that believes in the Constitution should be a member of the NRA, just for the sheer fact that it keeps politicians forced to where they got to come up with other ways of solving problems besides infringing on the Constitution. I'm not as much of a Second Amendment freak as I am a Constitution freak. And without the Second Amendment, you don't have the First Amendment. Without the First Amendment, you don't have the rest of the amendments because you can't stand up for yourself. So the president has officially become a politician. And I think getting away from Bannon and all the other people that he started with has been a catch-22. Because now he's forced to work with establishment people who are a part of the gin mill of politics, and so his behavior has become more political and less Trump, less of what we elected him for. So I'm not liking what I'm seeing on this. And if this is the road that we're going down, where he wants to make snide remarks about the NRA, when the NRA is not there to intimidate politicians. They do intimidate politicians, I'm sure, but that's not what they're there for. They're there to stand in front of the government as they try to infringe on our Second Amendment. The ACLU, love them or hate them, although they wouldn't probably defend a conservative most of the time in trying to do stuff for the First Amendment. But the ACLU stands, they say, in front of the First Amendment and defends it. Now, they cause a lot more problems than they're worth, but you don't see politicians coming down on them. So I've got a problem with the way the president has become a politician. And I think also what we see here now with Hope Hicks is resigning. She said that she told white lies for the president. Whatever. That doesn't make any difference to me. Jared Kushner, his clearance was reduced from his interim clearance from top secret, which he should have never had an interim top secret clearance. This isn't the movies. You don't like Transformers where they're like, she knows more about the Transformers than me. Okay, give her a top secret clearance. That's not the way it works. He should have never had a top secret clearance. It should have been no clearance until you get your background check done, period. I can't say that I'm not happy about that because I don't like Jared Kushner in the White House. I don't agree with his politics, and I don't agree with his lack of experience being the first line of defense from anybody with any kind of expertise getting to the president. I don't like that. So, but the president is he's in a position where everybody that he started with is gone. And now he's left with establishment people, whether he wanted it or not. And that's why we're seeing a politician. Speaking of that, very similar to that, let's go to the A block and we're going to talk about Texas. I got to step away from the camera for just a second. All right, I'm back. Sorry, I was having a little issue there with the soundboard, was going in and out, and it took me a while to fix it. So we are back, and it's done. Sorry it took so long, but let me just calm some people down here. So, where was I? As you can see, I'm red as fire because I was trying to get that done as quickly as possible. All right, there we go. Okay, so where was I now? We were talking about, and I'm sorry it took so long for me to go away, but it's interesting how many people stayed on Facebook for me. So I went, was talking about about Trump and how he's become a politician and how this is the wrong road for him to be going down in a situation like this, because he is only going to put himself in a hole here. See, politicians believe that, and the people that are guiding him are saying that it's, this is politics, the way you play it. You give a little here, you'll get a little there. But you know what's going to happen? There's going to be another school shooting. Except this time maybe it's going to be terrorists. And they'll have whatever weapon that they want. What are you going to do then? How are you going to say, well, we thought we were doing the right thing by taking away the weapons from 21-year-olds, but we didn't take into account Islamic terrorists. So, you see, he's backing himself into a hole that when another attack happens, he's going to be the beneficiary of all the Democrats piling on him and slamming him. Now, I swear it sounds like a parade outside my studio. So the next thing is with Texas. That's where we're wanting to go with the A block. Texas, and now as we see in a report from The Hill, and I'm going to pull that up here. Blue wave may be building in Texas. This comes off The Hill. It says more Democrat voters than Republicans have cast ballots ahead of next month's primary election in Texas, in what some party officials interpret as a new sign that a blue wave is building ahead of the midterm elections. Now, these are polls, and these are, I guess, they're taking, not polls, these are taking numbers of the people who have registered to vote, and it's 168,000 Democrats versus 138,000 Republicans. I'm telling you, Texas, you have to realize that you are a perfect example of what's happening to the rest of the country. You have sat back, you don't go vote, you go around and you brag all the time about how you got your guns and Texas, don't mess with Texas, and Texas will succeed and all this stuff. Let me tell you something. Texas is being subverted from the top down. It's not a bunch of locals that are coming in and trying to take over your town or take your guns away from you personally. What's happening is there are more Democrats, just like in Florida. See, Florida used to be a very conservative state. And then all these liberal New Yorkers moved down there and became sheriff like Scott Israel, or they just moved into that neighborhood. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is down there. All these people, they're not native Floridians. These are people that have moved to Florida and have systematically changed the political atmosphere. Some of them knowingly, some of them not knowingly. And I can guarantee you this David Hogg, and by the way, don't tag him and me, which I know that you guys are doing it, and JB will know what I'm talking about. You put his picture up there and a picture of my book together, it does not look good on a tweet. I don't want to be anywhere close to that leftist, okay? These children that I'm not going to fall to the media is calling them children. These adults, they're going to be graduated next year, as I talked about yesterday. They are byproducts of these leftists moving to Florida. Now, Texas is going the same way. Texas is going to be a completely blue state before long. They're going to start having, you're going to get a governor, because if that's the case, that means the people are going to show up and vote for governor are going to be not just Democrat, they're going to be leftist. And they're going to get a governor in there who's going to systematically start taking your guns away. And they're going to start messing with your taxes. They're going to start messing with the amount of land you can own. You can see, Texas is the same as Florida, except it's not New Yorkers, it's leftist Californians who are probably just about as bad, if not worse. Look at Colorado, suffered from that. Except Colorado got slammed by people from Portland, Oregon, Seattle, California. You see, what these people do is they go in there, they make a couple of the cities very, not just liberal, very leftist. They put up all these laws. They do all these regulations. They raise the taxes. They limit your rights. And then everybody that lives there that was liberal to begin with says, I'm getting out of here. And then what do? They go to another conservative state. Why do they keep going to conservative states? Well, for one, because the politicians are organizing a lot of this stuff. But secondly, by and large, the conservative states are the least regulated. They have the least amount of crime. They have the best way of life. That's why you got leftists moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, all over Texas, down into Florida, into Colorado. They ruin everything that they touch on a whole. And Texas needs to realize, just like President Trump needs to realize, you can go in, President Trump, and say, I'm not a politician, and I'm great at this, and I'm great at that. But when you start playing politics, guess what? You're a politician. And you're not so great at this and that because you're failing, especially in this one thing that could keep children alive. You're moving at the pace of molasses straight out of the fridge. Texas, the same thing is happening to you, except it's not the politicians. It's you, the people in Texas. You think everything's fine, that you got it. You know nobody's going to take your guns, and you're going to listen. Not only are you super liberal, but you also had a church in Texas where all these people got killed, and the neighbor had to take the shooter out because nobody in the church had a gun. Why? Of all the places where there should have been somebody armed in a church, it should have been Texas. But you're not doing it because of politically correct, it's not the way to go anymore. People don't carry their firearms with them everywhere. So, Texas is in a bad position right now. They are actually getting subverted faster than the overall country. So you guys need to realize that, and you need to prepare yourself for it. But it's a very interesting article that you need to look at closely if you can look at The Hill, and that's the online publication The Hill, and the Blue Wave may be building in Texas. Now, let me look at something else here. We already talked about that. So, the last thing before I close up for tonight. Yesterday, Jolene got really upset because people were talking bad about Jeff Sessions. Well, surprise, surprise, today, the president is talking bad about Jeff Sessions. And this comes off of Yahoo News. Trump rips Sessions' disgraceful decision on probe of alleged FISA abuse. Now, when I was reading this, I don't think that headline quite gets it correctly. He's not disgusted with the FISA probe. What he's disgusted with is the way that the probe is being handled. It's being handled very slowly. It's being put in the hands of the Inspector General, and who is an Obama appointee. And for some strange reason, when Jeff Sessions is asked about it, he answers it exactly like a leftist politician. He says, we have initiated the appropriate process that will ensure complaints against this department will be fully and fairly acted upon as necessary. As long as I am the Attorney General, I'll continue to discharge my duties with integrity and honor, and this department will continue to do its work in a fair and impartial manner according to law and the Constitution. First off, that doesn't say anything to me. Secondly, how can you have a fair and impartial investigation when we have been shown proof that the very people that were appointed by Obama, that the very people at the top of all these agencies are not to be trusted? How can you just say then we're going to give it over to the Inspector General, who's an Obama appointee, who's at the top of his game in that office, and expect him to carry out a fair investigation? That's what President Trump is angry about. Now, I agree with President Trump on this one. I think, first off, I think Jeff Sessions should be fired. And secondly, I think that the other people that have even been anywhere close to that office during the time of this FISA misuse of the dossier and all these bungled investigations against Trump, whether you love Trump or not, you don't want people in office in that position with that much power being ideologically driven. You don't want that, trust me. Because if they're not constitutionalists, it's going to come back and bite you eventually, no matter what you think, no matter what side of the aisle you fall. So we have a problem in Jeff Sessions, and we have a problem in the DOJ. We have a problem in the Inspector General's office. We have a problem in the FBI, in the DOD, in the State Department, in the CIA, in the NSA, and all these other agencies with these political appointees and with the people that have worked their way to the top. We've got serious problems. And I would just suggest that anybody that wants to defend Jeff Sessions take a step back and look at the reality of what's going on. It's all people at the top from this ruling class that have been in Washington, D.C. for 30 or more years. None of them do anything to hurt the other, and they all play the political game. Jeff Sessions, that's what he knows, and that's what he's doing. And it's going to fail. I can almost guarantee you that nothing is going to come out of these investigations. Nothing. And the people that have broken major laws, the people that have literally committed treason and espionage and obstruction of justice and tampering with an election will walk away. Mark my word on that. So the president needs to get rid of him as fast as Florida needs to get rid of Scott Israel. And that's about it. All right, sorry about the long delay, though. I had to get stuff fixed, and I'll try not to have that happen again. I think that's about it. Let's go to the Truth Zone right now. So, folks, if I seem a little aggravated, it's because I am. This type of stuff aggravates me because I'm seeing my country that I served honorably for 20 years in different ways crumble. And I'm seeing people stand around like they know what they're doing when they don't. I see people standing around playing politics with children's lives when they shouldn't be doing that. And I see American citizenry standing by idly while all this happens. And it's infuriating to me. So here's what I propose. Just like we're going to use this experiment of promoting this book to #1 so that we can get this book in the hands of everybody. And so that you, the CQRF, the people of the citizenry of this country can realize that when you stand together on something, it doesn't matter if the mainstream media stands against you. It doesn't matter if the politicians don't know about you. It doesn't matter. When the people stand together, they have strength and they can make things happen. So let's use this as an example of pushing this book to the top. by doing, not just buying it, but by telling every single person you know about it, including calling into radio stations, calling into the news desk at your TV stations, telling teachers, telling principals, telling clergymen, congressmen, senators, president, whoever. Tell everybody. Get this book out. Tweet it. Put it on Facebook. Put it on Twitter. On Instagram. Tell your kids about it. Tell them to tell other kids about it. Let's show that when the citizenry, a group of citizens, put their minds together, they can get something done. Because I can guarantee you this. Those people on the left are doing that right now. They are literally, they are organizing so fast. As I said yesterday, in a week, they were able to put together protests in multiple cities against the NRA, calling the NRA baby killers, which is a total leftist term from the Vietnam War. They have moved like lightning because they're organized and because they're well funded. We don't even stand together. So this is what I recommend, is that we stand together on this little attempt to demonstrate our strength. And I hope that the president that I supported, and I know most of you supported, and even if you didn't support him, you should still hope this, that the president doesn't continue to play politics, that he takes a step back and says, nope, I'm going to stick with my guns, I'm going to do what's right. The president can do more in 4 years by doing what's right and by sticking with the truth and by looking for real effective solutions than he could if he did 8 years by compromising. He needs to stand up and make these things. It doesn't have to be controversial. The things that I propose for school safety are not controversial. They're effective. Let's hope that he does that, or else he may be out in 4. I'm Jonathan Gillum. That dog down there is Rico. This is The Experts, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm also going to be on Sean Hannity's show tomorrow at 5 with Danielle McLaughlin. Check it out. I'm sure it'll be a good debate. She's awesome. She's liberal, but she's coming around. And remember, wherever you see this face, wherever you hear this voice, regardless of what politicians are saying, the truth has arrived. I'll hit the right button in a minute. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.